I would invite Sergei Nосенко, Ukrainian businessman, the founder of the analytical center and civil political movement Rozvitok, which means development. Please have your floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Andrei and Cato Institute, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you and address U.S. community about the Ukraine. We have been discussing extensively what to say those days, and as you see, we just get so many news, and that's why we changed a lot our program. So we prepared the presentation with the figures, which you will probably see, and also address that, and you will see how much was lost during those years, those recent years, from the economical standpoint in Ukraine, and how much we declined, and how much poverty we have now. But the question is, we kind of having lots of events, historical Maidans, and after those Maidans, we kind of came to the same point. I mean, same sort of issues like corruption, like poverty, like absence of economical growth. And the question is why? Why it's happening in this way? Why this like rich and potentially great country is so poor and so in disaster? And the answer to this question could be that the system has been changed since 1991 when we restored our independence. And that's the key point. Now if you look at the political map of Ukraine, you see the same kind of tendency. I mean, you have left parties everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter if they say they are nationalists, they're patriots, or they are just social democrats. They are all left. They kind of use the same rhetoric, and they say to the people, we are going to take from the rich and distribute, which is completely wrong. I mean, because we have witnessed those kind of political platform in the Soviet Union, and it failed, and it cost millions of lives. So why should Ukraine continue in this way in the 21st century? Coming back to history, we all admit that Ukrainians have a strong will to freedom and personal liberty. Probably is the only one country on the Soviet space which demonstrated this will so strongly on the first and the second Maidan, not taking into consideration the suffer and the loss of the 20th centuries, where both of the world wars were held practically in the territory of Ukraine, when we lost around 5 million people during famine, and it just the price people were paying for freedom, for their national identity. And what we have now is just not acceptable. I mean, the question of this panel is if Ukraine is on the right way, and the answer is no, absolutely no. And the next question is who's responsible? I would say this is the government. I mean, because people bringing them to power was expecting very different. They were expecting the change, the reform, not the prosecution. I mean, before prosecute, you have to change the system so people understand that in the current situation, every single entrepreneur in Ukraine is a potential criminal. I don't know if you feel it, but I was doing business in my country since '91 and then never get rid of that feeling, because in the Soviet Union there was an OBHSS who was prosecuting every kind of economical activity. Now we have prosecutor's office, we have fiscal authorities who are completely corrupt, they take bribes, and they just depress the economy. There is no respect for private property. That's why there is no investment in the country, because people could not protect their rights for property in the courts. They could not repatriate their profit because of the national bank making those regulations and practically making it impossible to get money out of the country. So in this world, economical growth is something essential. And then when we founded our organization, which we intentionally called development, we were focusing on those issues and traveling around the country, speaking to the ordinary people. We understood that they are not educated at all about their opportunities as economical individuals. You know, they still think about big government. They think about the state-owned economy, which is probably outdated already for many years. So this is kind of philosophy which is behind of the Ukraine. I mean, you don't need to have a great and big state budget to make people comfortable in your country. You just need to give them freedom and opportunities. And we are dreaming about this sort of a country where every individual, doesn't matter Ukrainians, Georgians, Armenians, Russians, British, French, they will feel comfortable. They will be comfortable to do business. They will be comfortable to live, to brought up children, and to be proud to be Ukrainian citizens. That's the essential point. Let's take several examples, like from the economical standpoint. I mean, Andrei mentioned the currency exchange, and this is completely right, and this is completely linked to IMF program which we have in Ukraine, because IMF is doing their work on the accounting basis and not taking into consideration the necessity to stimulate economical growth. I mean, and it appeared that nobody in the country was able to protect the sovereignty of Ukraine and to protect Ukrainian banks. We lost just around 87 banks for the last 3 years, and means we lost national capital. And moreover, we lost like 700 billion hryvnias in those banks. 700 million hryvnias is, for the old exchange rate, is almost $100 million. I mean, we don't need any kind of external financing if we learn how to be hosts in our own house. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, and the NBU, is the National Bank of Ukraine, is supposed to be an independent organization, but is nowadays it completely depends on the president. I mean, that's obvious. You know, for the moment, the National Bank governor is on vacation and long-term vacation, and no other governor is appointed in the time when the country is so poor and so in need of investments and strong politics in the financial sector. This is one thing. Then the other topic we are now discussing is that about the lethal weapon to protect Ukraine. Yes, it's important. I mean, it's important when you are at war. But look, who's gonna be in charge of that weapons? I mean, Oboronprom, everybody knows, is a monster. Is a corrupt monster which is just not transparent. I mean, how we can rely and get those weapons in this current system? I mean, this is a stress to everybody, and the community will be after complaining that at the end of the day that weapons ended to be sold to somebody. I mean, why don't IGIL or ISIS? I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, and the other example is natural gas and Naftogaz, and we have been promised many times. And I'm from my business standpoint, I'm an investment banker. So we were trying to help the government many times to finance the the subway construction in Kiev and also trying to help them to reform Naftogaz. But at the end of the day, this is not transparent how they even choose the advisors. I mean, the example of Naftogaz is just there. I mean, Rothschild and the Rothschild were acting through their Moscow office. I mean, they were speaking with Yanukovych about splitting the Naftogaz, and now the same people they are speaking with the current government how they will split Naftogaz, and this is not transparent at all. We don't know anything about who's gonna be in charge of transit of natural gas. And the other story is everybody says that we need an investment to increase our own production. At the end of the day, as I said, you couldn't just get any kind of investment from outside because the rule of law is not there, is completely prohibitive to any kind of investor to put money into the country. So we will still be dependent, doesn't matter what the government say, we will still be dependent on the importing of natural gas. I mean, and then we all know that the gas which is coming from the side of Europe is in fact has Russian origin, unfortunately. And at the same time, in the 70s, Ukraine used to be the only one of the few natural gas producing regions in the Soviet Union before they start developing the Siberia. So that's a huge deposit there. And strategically, Ukraine is very important for the world. I mean, it's just, as I said, the wars were always there because of the geopolitical location. We have the best agricultural lands in Europe. So that's a country which can offer many things to the international community, international business communities and investors. But at this moment, we just could not realize that potential, unfortunately. So I just said about the main thing which are not good in the country, but to my mind, the plan is just completely changes the system. The system to deregulate, to remove the procedures which are source of corruption, and then after that we will be able to prosecute people because for the moment you literally can prosecute everybody. I mean, in our organization we have several business people like IT guys, and they always complain, I mean, about the law enforcement authorities are just a part of a business process, which is completely unacceptable. It doesn't matter if it's the tender procedures or just normal economical activity. The other thing is a tax reform. We should change the tax system, which is absolutely outdated. We should come back to the conditions when their national capital will be growing again and not declining like it happened right now. So from the international standpoint, I would suggest that we should not say Ukraine is the government in Ukraine. We should think about people and separate people and the government for the moment, because unfortunately, to my opinion, and it's supported by the facts that people are leaving the country, you know, that's like 30 million, 32 million people instead of official 45 is just very sad. I mean, young people leaving to live in Poland, in Germany, everywhere, they just don't stay. So we are losing the country, and that's the point to just completely redo the system. Thank you.